You've seen him on Sportsnet. You've heard him on The Fan. Well, today he joins the Locked On Blue Jay podcast. Ben Ennis in the house talking Toronto Blue Jay baseball with us. Some of that conversation today and some tomorrow. And it is Trivia Tuesday. Plus, since tomorrow's game is a 1 p.m. Eastern start, I thought you may catch the podcast later in the day. So we'll finish today's episode getting set for tomorrow's afternoon matinee series finale. And it looks like an absolute doozy. That's Kevin Gausman versus Sandy Alcantara.
You are Locked On Blue Jays, your daily Toronto Blue Jays podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, friends. Craig Ballard, Locked On Blue Jays, Locked On Blue Jay podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. It's your team every day. Reminder that tonight's Blue Jay game and all Blue Jay games, right, available on SiriusXM. If you're checking out today's Locked On Blue Jays podcast episode on the Locked On Blue Jays YouTube page, hello to you. Thank you for spending part of your day talking Toronto Blue Jay baseball with me. Please hit that like, drop that comment, and hit that subscribe. And to the everydayers making the Locked On Blue Jay podcast your first podcast listen each and every day, thank you. Hello to you as well. Thank you for that. Hit that 5-star review as well, please, and thank you. Had a great conversation with Ben Ennis from Sportsnet. We're not going to have any further ado. Let's jump into some of that right now. Craig Ballard, Locked On Blue Jays, very, very pleased to be joined. And Ben, every time I do this, I always say I'm not smart enough to know. Is it the gentleman, like, when they're watching it, right? Is it the gentleman on my left? Is it the gentleman on my right? I never know how that's going to work out, Ben. So I always just play it safe. I say, the gentleman beside me. How about that? The gentleman beside me. We see, yes, indeed, that is Ben Ennis from the Fan Drive Time. Yes, indeed, joining us today. Now, Ben, I know you're a father coming off of Father's Day weekend, and I know the Fan Drive Time is keeping you busy. So I know one of the things you're about to say to us is, oh, Craig, I'm keeping busy. But other than that, Ben, how would you describe things? How are things on your end?
They're very good, man. They're it's I love this time of year. Well, not just because it's baseball season, but the fact that we can get outside after being locked in our homes for about 8 months of the year. Getting outside. Both my kids are playing baseball. With the little guy just started t-ball this year, and the 7-year-old is playing baseball. He's hitting off of pitching machines, so that keeps me busy. A lot of catch in the backyard. A lot of soft tossing. Hitting practice. So yeah, I've been busy with the kids, with baseball in my professional life and my personal life.
Immersed in baseball. Well,
That's
Ben,
right.
I can think of worse ways to spend time. So I'm liking that. Liking that a lot. T-ball. Wow, you're bringing. Geez, and they'll have memories of this, Ben. You have memories, right, of some of your T-ball days, of some of your baseball days growing up. Like this is the core time. So a very exciting time for you there. That is awesome. Now, speaking of baseball. Toronto Blue Jays. Okay. Now, Ben, I always like to start with this question here. Just I like to get an idea of what does the guest covet? What are they prioritizing here? So if I were to say to you, Ben, that I've actually come back from the future and the 2023 Toronto Blue Jays actually win the World Series, what's your first instinct on that, Ben? Well, Craig, if that's the case, then X must have gone really well. What's the X that you would say there?
Well, Vlad looked a lot better than he does right now. Would be number one. It should be said that April looked pretty good, despite the fact that the home run power wasn't necessarily there. So we've even seen it this year. But holy cow, since about the start of May, which is, did coincide with that wrist injury where he missed a couple of games. But it has to be number one, right? Because Blue Jays go through that horrible stretch against the American League East, losing 9 of 11. Losing 5 straight series against the American League East. Jeez. And not all those games were blowouts. There are some winnable games in there. Yeah, and there's runners in scoring position luck that they didn't get. You know what they needed? They needed like Vlad to hit 4 home runs in a week or something. We have not seen that. I guess it's yet to be determined if he has that in him for 2023, which would be an entirely different conversation. But that's got to be number one. I mean, secondarily to that, I guess you could tell me that Alec Manoah returned to the major leagues and look somewhat similar to the guy we saw the first 2 years that he spent in Major League Baseball. But for me, there's one guy, and I know it's not like basketball where it's one guy can take you from an also-ran to a championship contender. It's not that, but Vlad has an outsized importance in this lineup, and if he's a sub 800 OPS guy, hasn't hit an extra base hit in like half a month. I think it's been 12, 13 games since he's had an extra base hit. You cannot exist. You cannot exist. The 2023 Toronto Blue Jays cannot do anything close to the things that were expected of them if this is the Vlad we get for 162 games.
You know, it's funny, Ben, that segue, because I wanted to talk to you about Vlad. I know on Drive Time you deep dive Vlad the other day. When I go in, I deep and I look at the numbers and I deep dive Ben. I've added this up 4 times myself, like literally 4 times, to see, am I looking at this correctly? So I took a look at Vlad's career. I took his numbers out of Salem Field, out of Dunedin. So when he's hit at an actual major league park in his career, and Ben, forgive me, this is a legitimate sample size. This guy's been on the big league level since 2019, and I've never been a bigger fan of a player than Vlad. Well, George Bell, sure, he was my favorite ever, but I've always loved Vlad coming up through the system. I always thought he was going to be a first ballot Hall of Famer, and I'm a Laker fan, Ben. I didn't even put that on Kobe Bryant. Like, there's so many Carlos Delgado. There's so many players coming up who I really thought would be special, but I needed to see it on the big league level, with the light shining. Vlad, I was so willing to anoint him because when he was coming up through the minors, Ben, you saw it. He wasn't willing to play the pitcher's little reindeer games. He wasn't willing to expand the strike zone. You had to come in the strike zone, and that swing in that strike zone is so violent and amazing that he was going to be awesome. Outside of those parks, so in big league parks, Ben, he's hitting 275, and he averages a home run every 20, a little over 20 at-bats. So depending how many at-bats you want to give him on a season, even if you give him the 634 that he had last season, which was his career high, that's a 27, 28 home run pace. There are so many batters. Varsho, there are so many players, right, Ben, in the league that we would sign up right now. 275 and 28 home runs, we would sign up right now. Forgive me for having these lofty expectations, Ben. That's upwards of 40 points below where Vlad needs to be. Like, what do you think from this guy going forward? Because I hear you on this season. Could the wrist injury have been in play? But man, he had 48 home runs in 2021. He's had 41 since. I'm getting really concerned, Ben.
Yeah, well, I mean, you're speaking my language here because this has been my hobby horse for a while. And again, it goes. You go back to that 2021 season, and you look at the power numbers that were put up in Dunedin and Buffalo, and it's not necessarily that those ballparks have like weird dimensions. They're not little league parks. The fences are not 150 feet to hit it over. But for whatever reason, and it wasn't just Vlad, they played extremely hitter friendly, and he took advantage, as he's perfectly allowed to do. But I mean, that season is the reason why we have these conversations about him, right? That we say that we've seen the ceiling. We've seen him be, well, he was the best offensive player in the American League in 2021, finished second in MVP voting to Shohei Ohtani, but he was better offensively than Shohei that season. We've seen it. Now, what did we see? I mean, that's what we're all trying to wrap our arms around, trying to figure it out, because it was the home run power, but it was also it was the approach, which is, I mean, something that, I mean, if you want to put your finger on one part of this, as a layperson, somebody that never played in the major leagues of baseball, but I've talked to enough people that have, and enough people that have spent time around him. It's like, it feels like 60, 70, 80% of the problem is approach. Wow. And being selective and having a plan at the plate. We saw that in 2021. And I will say that we saw that at the beginning of this season. For whatever reason, that hasn't been maintained throughout the course of a season. Outside of 2021, we've seen it so sparingly. And like you said, when Vlad was coming up through the minor leagues, I mean, one of the things I thought for sure we would see, I didn't know necessarily we'd see the finished product at the major leagues right away, but I thought we'd see a refined approach. I thought we'd see a guy getting into hitters counts, pitchers being afraid of him, getting into a 3-1 count, and then a pitcher making a mistake and then hitting that ball over the fence. He's been a lot more aggressive than I ever anticipated him being, and swinging at a lot more pitches that are borderline, which he's capable of hitting. And that's part of the problem too. I mean, we all remember the 2-homer game at Yankee Stadium, the 4 extra base hits, and the Garrett Cole and doffing the cap, and the balls were all over the strike zone. He was peppering them, all over he was hitting them over the wall. He's hitting them off the wall. I mean, the guy has skill to be able to hit those pitches. That's why you're seeing an above average hitter, even with this unrefined approach. But if he wants to be that 2021 guy, that's no way to live. And I just, the further we get away from 2021, the more dubious I am that we're ever going to return there. But I mean, he's still 24 years old, so there's plenty of time for him to figure it out. But it's hasn't been great since April this season.
There's so much talk too, Ben, about what could the Blue Jays do at the trade deadline, this and that, and we'll get into some of that as well. But I'm a firm believer there's nothing that could happen for the 2023 Toronto Blue Jays that would be more important, that would be more valuable than the actual Vladimir Guerrero Jr. walking in the door. And as you said, having one of those weeks where he just carries the team. The offense continues to struggle. Did not matter. There were 2 or 3 games in there where Vlad, because he's had some big moments too late in games, Ben, and he just has not come through. Okay, come on, Slim Daddy Vlad. I need you to pick that up there. More with Ben Ennis from Sportsnet coming right up, including Trivia Tuesday. And remember, you can catch tonight's Blue Jays game on SiriusXM. Now, first, I wanted to mention how pleased I am to finally have an answer to those asking for a good spot to get Blue Jay tickets, in particular, last-minute Blue Jay tickets. GameTime.co, the GameTime app. Buying tickets for your favorite events, it shouldn't be stressful. GameTime is the fast and easy way to buy tickets for all sports, music, comedy, theater, you name it, near you in your area. Killer deals on last-minute tickets, and they have the best price guarantee, so you can stop stressing over the tickets and start getting hyped for the fun you're about to have. And I say that best price guarantee, well, that's the Game Time guarantee. That means if you find tickets in the same section and row for less, Game Time will credit you 110% of the difference. Okay. It's the fastest growing ticketing app in the country for a reason. I've used it 3 times and going to be more. I'll tell you that, going to Blue Jay games, actually. You get images of your seats before you buy, so you know exactly what to expect when you arrive. You buy the tickets in a matter of seconds. It's 2 taps and you're done. Yes, that easy. As I say, I've done it. So the reason I keep using it is the ease of it. Then it's loaded right to your phone, so you're not fumbling through your emails or anything like that. You just show your phone to the ticket taker. Enjoy your show. Enjoy your game. Thank you. I will. Snag tickets without the stress with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Now, again, create an account and redeem the code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last-minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. Now on Locked On Blue Jays, let's get into some Trivia Tuesday. Blue Jays are at the Marlins right now, so here's 3 Blue Jay trivia questions with a Marlins twist. I'm going to ask all 3 questions. You can pause the podcast if you want to take some time to think about it. Right after I ask the 3 questions, we're going to be rejoined by Ben Ennis. I'm going to ask him the 3 questions, and we'll reveal the answer. So that's all coming right up. But give it a pause if you want to take a second to think about your answer on any of these questions. So as Jake Peralta would say, if you're a Brooklyn Nine-Nine fan, you know this one. He would say, question the first. Dontrelle Willis is tied. Dontrelle Willis is, so you remember Dontrelle Willis, the D-Train. Awesome. Oh, man, how fun was he, right? Dontrelle Willis tied for the Marlins franchise record for the most complete game shutouts as a Marlin with 8. He did that 8 times. What former Toronto Blue Jay is he tied with that also did it 8 times as a Marlin? And your clue is this former Blue Jay became a Blue Jay because he was pried away from the Marlins with a very lucrative contract by the Blue Jays. Second question. What longtime Blue Jay, absolute star, let's just say what longtime Blue Jay played 1 season. He went from the Blue Jays to the Florida Marlins, then Florida Marlins in 2005, spent only 1 season with the Marlins, but 301 batting average, 33 home runs, 951 OPS. So clearly we're describing a slugger here, right? So what slugger, longtime Blue Jay slugger, went from the Blue Jays after a long tenure with the Blue Jays to the then Florida Marlins, in 2005, hit 301, 33 dingers, 951 OPS. Woof. Third and final question here takes us to the 1997 World Series. Awesome World Series. The then Florida Marlins against the then Cleveland Indians. It went to Game 7, and Game 7 went to the bottom of the 11th, tied at 2. Holy moly, right? Like drama. And check out the Blue Jay ties in this bottom of the 11th. So Bobby Bonilla opens with a base hit. Then former Blue Jay Greg Zahn popped out. He was trying to bunt. He popped out. Craig Counsell reaches on a bad error. That puts Bonilla at third, Counsell at first. We're going to get back to that error in a minute. Here comes Jim Eisenreich. Now, Jim Eisenreich was a prominent player for the Philadelphia Phillies in that lineup. He got a few big hits for the Phillies in that 1993 World Series against the Blue Jays. Again, the Blue Jay tie. They intentionally walk Eisenreich to load the bases, set up the force play at the plate. Here comes Devon White. Devon White, longtime, I shouldn't say longtime Blue Jay, but longtime major leaguer at this point, finishing up a part of his, towards the end of his career after the Blue Jays. He went to the Marlins. This was his second year with the Marlins. Now, Devo would ground into a force out at the plate. So 2-all, bottom of the 11th, Game 7, 2 out. Edgar Renteria gets that base hit. You know the highlight well. Everybody, Craig Counsell comes home and scores. Everybody's going absolutely nuts. Of course, right? Game-winning World Series hit in the bottom of the 11th of Game 7. Drama? Yeah, okay. Now, Craig Counsell comes in to score that winning run, and we mentioned that he reached on a very important error in that inning. What former Toronto Blue Jay made that insanely or unbelievably critical error? And it was one you'd never in a million years think that this particular player would make. Okay, let's get Ben Ennis back in the house. Let's go over these answers. It's Trivia Tuesday. We've got three three trivia questions about the Blue Jays. Now, the Blue Jays are in Miami, so it's all related to the Blue Jays and the Marlins.
Okay.
So the first question now, Dontrell Willis is tied in Marlins franchise history with, he's thrown 8 complete game shutouts. There's another Marlin who threw 8 complete game shutouts, and that Marlin was poached by the Toronto Blue Jays as a free agent back in the J.P. Ricciardi days. Who was that pitcher?
AJ Burnett.
It certainly was AJ Burnett. Exactly correct.
Right.
1 for 1. Well done. Yeah, AJ Burnett, man. A lot of people will forget his time with the Marlins. He was incredible with the Marlins, and for a long time, Ben, the 1-2 for the Blue Jays on a last place team with Burnett and Doc. So, like, ironically, the last place Blue Jays for a few years, Ben, would have been the one team you didn't want to see in that wild card round, because you would have seen 4 of the 5 games would have been Burnett and Doc. Like, wow. that was ironic back in the day.
There were some solid Blue Jays teams during the J.P. Ricciardi era, but unfortunately they played in the heyday of Yankees Red Sox. There was no getting out of that division. No, my favorite AJ Burnett box score is not one that he has with the Blue Jays. It was his no-hitter, and go back and look at it with the Marlins, where I think he threw like 160 pitches. He had 7 wild pitches, I think 7 walks, a couple of hit batsmen, but threw no-hitter. Wow. So kudos for him.
Wow. Yeah, in the record books, that's still there, right, Ben? Never mind the 7, this, the 7, that. That's still a no-hitter for AJ Burnett. Okay, hats off to him. What longtime Toronto Blue Jay, and I'll give you a clue, their star, left the Jays in 2005, went to the Marlins. He played 1 season with the Marlins, 301 batting average, 33 home runs, and a 951 OPS. I think a lot of people forget that this star played 1 season with the Marlins, and it was a good one, as you see there.
Star played with the Marlins. I mean, not Carlos Delgado.
It certainly was Carlos Delgado. Yes, Carlos Del Suato. Yes, indeed. Yeah. He played that 1 season for the Marlins before heading to the Mets for right. Now remember, he left the Blue Jays for the Marlins, handpicked the Marlins, right? Had a lot of suitors, but then this is the time, Ben, you'll remember, where the Marlins, after that 1 year, they blew it all up, right? They had that massive fire sale, and Delgado was, one of their massive fire sales, and Delgado was one of them. So Ben Ennis batting 1,000, 2 for 2 here. Okay.
Nice.
Third and final question here on Trivia Tuesday on Locked On Blue Jays. It takes us back to the 1997 World Series. Now, this one was a doozy. This one was the then Florida Marlins against the then Cleveland Indians. Goes to Game 7. The then Indians tie Game 7 in the bottom of the 9th. Drama. Game 7 goes to the 11th. Oh my gosh. Drama. And in the bottom of the 11th, there's all kinds of Blue Jay ties here. So Bobby Bonilla opens with a base hit. Then future Blue Jay Greg Zahn would bunt. He would pop out. And Craig Counsell would reach on a bad error, and we're going to get to that in a minute here. That would put Counsell at first, Bonilla at third. So the Marlins would intentionally walk Jim Eisenreich. The Indians would intentionally walk Jim Eisenreich. That's Blue Jay ties as well. You remember Eisenreich was one of the better hitters for Philly in that 93 World Series against the Blue Jays. The next batter up would be Devon White. Devon White had gone from the Blue Jays to the Marlins. He grounds into a force out at the plate. So now they're loaded, 2 out, and it's that Edgar Renteria base hit that scores Craig Counsell. Everybody's going wild. Marlins have won the World Series. Now, we talked about Counsell. He's that winning run, and we talked about he's on base because there was a really bad error during that inning. What former Toronto Blue Jay committed that huge error? He was a 4-time Toronto Blue Jay. There's your hint, Ben. He was a 4-time Toronto Blue Jay.
I think you finally saw me, Craig. I couldn't tell you. No.
And he was playing second base, where the then Indians had moved him to second base. He was a lifetime shortstop, 4-time Blue Jay.
Yeah, no, I'm not going to get it.
Rest in peace to Tony Fernandez. That was Tony Fernandez making that huge error at second base. You don't have a lot of stories, Ben, about Tony Fernandez making big mistake. In fact, last week on Locked On Blue Jays, we had Rob Butler on, and we were deep diving because he was part of that 93 World Series team. And he was saying, my God, things really turned for that team when it wasn't mid-season. It was about 40% of the way into the season. Remember, the Blue Jays traded once again, brought in Fernandez, right? And he hit over 300.
Yeah.
Tony Fernandez in that World Series, Ben, in that 93 World Series, had 9 RBIs. That's, for a shortstop, that remains a record. Like, man, Tony Fernandez, rest in peace, right? He's one of the all-time Blue Jays.
Oh, no doubt. And yeah, I mean, you mentioned Rob Butler. I remember covering the Toronto Intercounty Maple Leafs down at Christie Pitts, and Tony would occasionally drop by there, check in on the local semi-pro baseball team. So yeah, certainly a guy that stayed in the Toronto baseball scene long after his playing days.
That is awesome. Now for our third and final segment today on Locked On Blue Jays, let's deep dive tomorrow's matinee. It's the series finale. Now, of course, usually we look at games the day of, but as Wednesday's game starts at 1 p.m., and of course, remember now you can catch that on Sirius XM, I thought we'd get set for that game now, so hopefully you see this or hear this prior to that game. And on paper, what a game. That's Kevin Gausman versus Santi Alcantara. Is that going to work? Holy moly. Gausman last pitched in Miami back in 2019. 2019 was a really odd season for Gausman. He pitched there as a Brave and he pitched there as a Red that season in 2019. He was really trying to find himself still in baseball. Hadn't developed the split finger that we know and love just yet. Now the Blue Jays have won the last 5 starts from Kevin Gausman, 4-0, undefeated in June. He had that blow up at home against Minnesota a couple starts back. Now the Blue Jays would rally to win that game. Also had that blow-up start against Boston and that blow-up start against Minnesota. And you can sort of see the blow-up start to unfold right before your eyes early on. It's usually, the key is usually when that fastball velocity is off and that location is off. I mean, the location can be one thing, I guess. That's never going to be a good thing, but it's really that fastball velocity that's really telling the tale early in those 3 blowout starts. Kevin Gausman, split finger, of course. I mean, absolute top pitch in baseball. Gausman has 70 strikeouts this season on the split finger alone. Holy in the American League, there are 26 pitchers, okay? 26 pitchers to have at least 70 strikeouts this season. Gausman has 70 alone on the splitter. Top tier pitch in all of baseball. Wow. So we talked about those bad starts. He's had those 3 bad starts. Well, he's had 12 starts outside of those 3 debacles. Blue Jays are 8-4 in those 12 starts, which really says something. Because remember now, we've talked every day as we'll remember, we've deep dived the run support. I have to put it in quotes, right? The run support that Kevin Gausman gets from this Toronto Blue Jay team. They give him 3 runs per game. So to be 8-4 over these other 12 starts is remarkable. The Gausman in those other 12 starts. I hope you're sitting down for this. I mean, my goodness, in those other 12 starts, 12 out of 15 starts is a legitimate sample size. Kevin Gausman, 80 innings pitched, 10 earned runs. That's a 1.13 ERA. These other 12 starts, 1.13 ERA. 80 innings pitched, just 57 hits and just 17 walks allowed. So you see that whip, that walks and hit per inning pitched, below 1. These are video game numbers. This is complete domination. In those 80 innings, 108 strikeouts. Holy moly. Even with those 3 blow-up starts in there, so those 3 blow-up starts, of course, were quick exits for Kevin Gausman, but even with that said, he still leads the American League in strikeouts. Only Spencer Strider over there in Atlanta, he's the only one in all of baseball with more strikeouts than Gausman, and Strider's really struggling lately. Will not surprise me to see Gausman overtake as the number 1 strikeout pitcher in all of baseball. In those dozen starts we're talking about here, how's this? In those dozen starts, Kevin Gausman is averaging, here's his average stat line, his average production over those dozen starts. 6 2/3 innings pitched, 0.83 runs. Yeah, not even allowing a run per game. 0.83 runs on 5 hits with 1 walk, 9 strikeouts in there. 6 2/3 innings, averaging 9 strikeouts. My goodness. This will be even more good news coming here, right? This will be Gausman's 9th day start of the season. The other 8 day starts, his ERA is 1.40. Batters, hey, that splitter's tough to hit under any circumstances, right? When it's first thing in the morning, you're just getting up, you got to deal with Kevin Gausman. Oh boy, it's not going well. It's not going well for opposing hitters. Now, as far as the specific hitters he'll oppose, should be no surprise at all. Luis Arraez has been amazing against Gausman in his career. Not huge amount of games for Gausman, as we mentioned earlier, against the Marlins. But, of course, Arraez was in Minnesota. And you remember Minnesota got to Gausman a little bit last season, right? You remember that as a Blue Jay. Well, Luis Arraez, 5 for 6 in his career against Kevin Gausman. Is Luis Arraez unbelievable? Is this guy unbelievable? 5 for 6 against Kevin Gausman in his career. Yuli Gurriel, Lourdes' brother, is on the Marlins this season. He's the only Marlin that is really struggled big time against Gausman. He's just 2 for 9 with 3 strikeouts. So Gausman has dominated that matchup. But I just told you, Arraez dominates Gausman. Who doesn't Arraez dominate, right? But the rest of the Marlins, when you take Yuli Gurriel out of the mix, the rest of the Marlins, 17 for 42. That's a 4.05 batting average against Kevin Gausman. So he hasn't faced these guys a ton. That is true, but when he has, he's been hit. Now, I think the glass half full is not a lot of the at-bats we're talking about here. Certainly the Luis Arraez ones, yes, but not a lot of the at-bats that we're talking about here were against the Gausman with this incredible splitter in his back pocket, right, to bring to you. Garrett Hampson for the Marlins. He plays all the different positions for them. Now, he hit one home run in 2023, or hit one home run, sorry, so far this season. He had 2 home runs last season, but he's 5 for 12 with 3 home runs in his career against Kevin Gausman. Isn't that so insane? Like, this is one of those, hey, baseball being baseball stories, right? Hampson gets a home run once every 53 at-bats against any pitcher in baseball not named Kevin Gausman. And against Kevin Gausman, he gets one every 4 at-bats. Like, what? Like, what? Just, I mean, baseball being baseball, right? Gausman has been, we talked about how good he's been during the day games. He's pitched 51 1/3 innings of day games. He's allowed just 1 home run. Loving Kevin Gausman. And by the way, side note, aren't we glad? I mean, remember, we talked about this before. You see the contracts in that the other pitchers got this last offseason. Aren't we glad and aren't we fortunate that the Blue Jays landed Kevin Gausman when they did? Holy moly. Opposing Kevin Gausman tonight, 2022 National League Cy Young winner Santi Alcantara. Unrecognizable. Alcantara this season is the Marlins' Alek Manoah. Complete stud, complete superstar from last season. And the season before, completely unrecognizable so far in 2023. Sandy's at 2-5 with an ERA just a titch under 5. Holy moly. The Marlins have won, or they did win, just 2 of his first 9 starts. I mean, that's not ace behavior at all. No, they have won 4 of his last 5. And just like we talked about, the Blue Jays are undefeated in Gausman starts in June, while the Marlins are undefeated in Alcantara starts in June. The Alcantara's a changeup. Is really what's been at issue for him. That's the pitch the Blue Jays need to look to be elevated, miss his spot, and do damage with tonight. Get some hits off tonight, but string together some hits. It's not really when you're going to hit a home run or anything like that, but it's the pitch to hit that's it's been letting a lot of batters off the hook. With deep in the counts when Sandy's been ahead in the counts, missing a spot with a changeup. That changeup tonight, when it's missing his spots, Blue Jays have to be on it, almost like a get out of jail free card against Sandy, because of course eventually he's just going to put it together. We've been seeing this for too long. We know this. Sandy is special, right? So the Blue Jays have to take advantage when he's struggling right now. He throws a hard sinker. It's in the upper 90s. It's been good. He throws a fastball in the high 90s. It's been good. Mixes in a slider. It's been good. Again, they've all been good. Now, they're usually great. I will say that. And as this season, none of those pitches have really been as sharp. In particular, Alcantara with his command, not been as sharp in 2023, but he's always someone that's going to be dangerous, right? Again, that changeup. It's not yielding home runs, but it's missing spots a lot, and it's letting batters off the hook against Sandy. Opponents hitting just .213 versus Alcantara at home. So, oh boy, that's not very promising there. Now, as far as individual matchups, let's just for a quick second here, let's take Vladdy out of the mix. The rest of the Toronto Blue Jays are combined. Is this putrid? 2 for 27 versus Alcantara. A lot of offers in there, including Kevin Kiermaier at 0 for 8 with 5 strikeouts. What? 0 for 8 with 5 strikeouts. Is that domination? How about domination on the other side of the coin? How about Vlad? Let's get Vlad back in the mix now. Come on, this has got to be a game where we see Vlad do something. I mean, how could Sandy be a game where that's the cure for what ails a batter? I get it. Doesn't make any sense. But in his career, Vlad has pounded Sandy Alcantara. He's 5 for 7 against Sandy, a double and a home run in there. There's 4 RBIs in there. Vlad, please. Wednesday afternoon, it's getaway day. Let's have you just be ear to ear grinning on that plane as you guys head back to Toronto, because you had a great day, Vladdy. Got some things turned around against Sandy Alcantara. That'll wrap up Tuesday's episode of the Locked On Blue Jay podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Catch tonight's game, catch tomorrow's matinee as well on SiriusXM. Keep it locked on the Locked On Podcast Network and check out Sully hosting Locked On MLB. Go Jays, go, and we'll talk tomorrow.